Hello everybody, today we lost the great jazz pianist Chick Corea. That's his music playing in the background from his piano improvisations record on ECM. And I just thought I'd run through some of Chick's records that I've been a big fan of through the years. I think for most any musician in jazz, he's an incredibly pivotal figure who kept reinventing himself year after year after year, kept taking left turns and doing new things. I first heard of him before his fusion period with the first two Light as a Feather records, which are just little mini masterpieces if you don't have these. These are essential for any jazz fan, with Stanley Clarke on bass, Airto Moreira on drums, Flora Priem on vocals. I think I've got all that right. And these records created the standards. Spain, Light as a Feather. I think Crystal Silence is on these records. Might help to look at them. But they're just beautiful acoustic jazz records. Return to Forever, La Fiesta. Those are standards by anybody's notion that became something that all musicians had to play. Captain Marvel, 500 Miles High, Spain, You're Everything. These are just such beautiful, spirited, bubbly performances. And you get to hear Airto on drums, which is, he was known as a percussionist, but he was a wonderful drummer, is a wonderful drummer. My favorite Airto record is Virgin Land with Stanley Clarke on bass, and Billy Cobham produced it. That's an incredible record. But the way this floats and Chick's piano work, he was just such a bubbly, inventive. He sort of always reminded me of Mozart a little bit, very zippy and full of life and very energetic, and incredible melodies flowing out of his hands. He's also one of the first guys in jazz, I believe, to pioneer the Rhodes piano sound, which you can hear on the first Hymn of the Seventh Galaxy record. The first Hymn of the Seventh Galaxy, which is 1973, I believe, and is before he hit synthesizers. And this record is not a very good production, and of course they haven't reissued it and remastered it. The album that followed this, Where Have I Known You Before, is a much better production, and then Romantic Warrior is an incredible production. The story I was told by Lenny White was that Chick wanted to produce the record, and the band said, no, you have to let Lenny take the tapes for Romantic Warrior and go to LA, and that's why that record is still one of the greatest sounding records in jazz, really. That's a prophetic record. The sound of that record is so thick and glowing. It's such a beautiful sound. But this is this also is full of what I consider to be fusion standards. This band was so gritty and so funky, and if you have the box set that Universal put out many years ago that shows originally Steve Gadd was in the band, not Lenny White, and originally Bill Connors was in the band, Al Di Meola, and I much prefer this group to the group that became world famous, because Al Di Meola at the end of the day is just not my kind of thing. He's just endless notes and whatever, as where Bill Connors was a much more fiery, deep-seated player. It's funny, in Chick's next fusion thing, Electric Band, he had started out with a really amazing blues-oriented guitarist, Scott Henderson, which he then replaced with another million notes a mile guitarist, Frank Gambale. That's just my opinion. But this is an incredible album. It's hard to find. Hasn't been reissued, which is really strange. This, along with a couple Mahavishnu Orchestra records, some European records, is the the foundation of a lot of jazz rock. And I think this is a brilliant record. Incredible performances on here. The songs Captain Senior Mouse, Hymn of the Seventh Galaxy, After the Cosmic Rain, Theme to the Mothership, The Game Maker. This is just a phenomenal recording. Of course, everybody who's into jazz loves Now He Sings, Now He Sobs with Chick, Miroslav Vitous, and Roy Haynes. This is one of the mountains in jazz as far as I'm concerned. The conversation between Chick and Roy Haynes is so kinetic and so on fire. This is just an essential jazz recording, essential jazz trio recording. And Chick could play in any situation. He did duet albums with Herbie Hancock. He played fusion, he played acoustic trio, he played a secondary fusion, he played classical, he did solo improvisation records. After the fusion period, he did this record, Chick Corea Friends, with Joe Farrell, Eddie Gomez, and Steve Gadd. And this is just such a beautiful record. It's very intimate recording. I think it's Chick entirely on Rhodes, I believe. Fender Rhodes Steinway acoustic grand piano. But what sticks with me on this record is the Fender Rhodes performance, and one of Steve Gadd's great records, the one-step children's song, samba song, Friends. I mean, this is just this is getting harder to find, but if you see this record, this is a German copy, pick it up. It's a beautiful record. The follow-up to Now He Sings, Now He Sobs. I don't actually know this record as well. It's on ECM, but it's probably great. Then Where Have I Known You Before, the second fusion album from Return to Forever. And this has got some, this record they turned into funk. It became much, much funkier. It's still a great record, or still a great, band. I prefer the first record just because it's grittier and funkier and more searing and burning. But this is an essential recording. And then as he followed up his fusion period, he had more records, primarily with Steve Gadd, and then later Gary Brown on drums. Leprechaun has a lot of amazing tracks. Then his wife gets on board, and that's kind of, you can kind of go with Gail Moran and you can't. But all of Chick's work is so funky. It's so Afro-Cuban. It's so just percolating and burning. And he was he had such an amazing touch and endless ideas and always in the moment. And I'll tell you my one story of interviewing him once. But this is cool. A Leprechaun Mad Hatter, very very similar to the Leprechaun, with just insane. This is like a full orchestra on here. With Steve Gadd, Gail Moran, Joe Farrell, Eddie Gomez, Herbie Hancock. This is just, these are amazing records of their time, amazing jazz records that really challenged everything else that was happening out there. And this is 78. This is all late 70s period. Some people look down their nose at these fusion records. I think these are brilliant records. This is what brought a lot of people, such as myself, into like acoustic jazz. Sort of a variation on Friends with Michael Brecker instead of Joe Farrell. Very intimate, just smoking. Steve Gadd, Eddie Gomez, just high velocity acoustic playing. All these records are brilliant. In 1987, when I first moved to New York, I came here for the first time, stayed in 1990. He launched a Chick Corea electric band. This is when I was still, a drummer, wannabe drummer, studying the Drummers Collective and hanging out with Zach Danziger, and we'd study all this stuff. And he already knew Dave Weckl, so we'd go talk to Dave. And once this band when this record came out, I was working at Tower Records, Lincoln Center then. The whole band came and they cleared out all the racks, which were then vinyl, and the band set up and played, and it was just unbelievable. I still have the cassette of that show somewhere. They played this entire album, and back then, late 80s, Upper West Side, Lincoln Center, the area was still heavily Hispanic. We had a lot of Hispanic people working at the store, and they all turned out for Chick's gigs, so it was like a big family affair. It was really, really something, and I still think this is a great record that epitomizes everything Chick brought. He had great inventions, he wrote great tunes, he gave the musician the great platforms to improvise on and just smoke. More recently he'd revisited the electric band. He was still doing a lot of acoustic stuff. He still put together great bands, very forward thinking. He had Marcus Gilmore in his last couple bands, one of the greatest young jazz drummers out there. Very forward thinking musician. I interviewed him, I can't remember who it was for, Downbeat or somebody, but I interviewed him uptown somewhere, and so I interviewed Chick, but I've had interviews with two people who wanted my photograph, with Elvin Jones, which if you look on my website, you'll see a photo of me with Elvin, and I wanted a photo with Chick. And our interview went really well. It was a little testy in places, Scientology and all that, but I said, would you mind if I had my photo taken with you? That'd be really great. And he said, sure, but can I have my photo taken with you? He said to me. I'm like, okay, that's kind of weird, but sure, why not? And later, when I was interviewing Stanley Clarke for something or another, I told Stanley that story. He laughed and he said, well, at the Scientology Central in Los Angeles, your photo with Chick is now on a giant board with all these other people, being prayed for by L. Ron Hubbard or something. Anyway, I thought that was funny. But what a great musician. They say he died on the 9th from a rare form of cancer. So we lost him early. He'd lost a lot of weight in the last few years, and he looked really, really good. Effervescent, looking his name on the dictionary, and effervescent, incredible music. Chick Corea, rest in peace. Thanks a lot.